For tuning into this episode of Channel Surfing. We're actually down here on the boat. It is Wednesday. We leave in the morning. So we're down here at the dock on the boat, and I'm reading the slip, and because we're getting up at dark 30 in the morning to head out. Our first stop is Ganges, British Columbia. So in this episode, we're going to go over what are some of the things that we did in preparation for the trip.
Close your eyes, hear the voice within, calling this heavy.
Alright, so looking over my notes here, some of the things that I did was stern tie. The boat show, not this last boat show, the one a year ago, I had a boat show special, so I picked up one of those ultramarine, I almost say they're gold-plated stern ties. Really expensive, but I got a small boat, space is at a premium. I wanted something that was really compact, so I bought 200 foot, which is the bigger the reel, or the bigger the line, the bigger the reel. And I just didn't want like a really big round pizza sticking on the side blocking the view in the back of the boat. So I was looking at the diameter of the reels, and 200 foot gave me a good diameter reel. I like the elegance and stuff of it. 200 foot might be somewhat short. It just means I got to pick my anchorages and do the best I can with what I got to work with. So for those of you that aren't Pacific Northwest boaters, what is stern tie and why do we care about stern tie? A lot of the anchorages up in British Columbia, we've been told, I said we've never gone that far ourselves, but in researching this, is a lot of the anchorages are really small and they're really steep. So if you think about trying to set your anchor going uphill, you can do that until the tide and the wind changes, and then now the boat goes the other direction, and then it would pull the anchor off the hill. So you anchor uphill, and then you tie the stern of the boat off to a rock, or on land or a tree, and that keeps the boat from swinging. Is what a stern tie does. It enable you to base it anchor uphill on water, and the water up in our parts of the Pacific Northwest is fairly deep. On top of that, I mean, we get 16-foot tide swings up here. In general, on a normal day, it's about a 12-foot tide swing. Going up Southeast Alaska, we're expecting upwards of 25-foot of tide swings. It gets even bigger when we go up there. So that's the stern tie. The dinghy, I had the dinghy we've had for since we bought the boat. I registered it, and I did that because of U.S. Coast Guard requirements. If you're going to use a dinghy in navigatable waters, which is salt water, right? Then the Coast Guard says it must be registered if there's a motor on the end. Doesn't matter how big the motor is. Washington state law says if I'm in Washington waters, under 10 horse, under 16 foot, the registration is not required. Well, that'd be like for a lake or a river. As soon as I hit salt water, the Coast Guard's involved, and they're going to say, how are you using it? Now, if you use it as a tender, right, then you can put T/T for tender 2 and the name of the boat. So I could say TT Channel Surfing on my dinghy. That would be fine, and I wouldn't need registration, but then I can only use it to or from shore. So in my case, I'm going to use it to or from Lemon Drop. I'm going to use it to photograph the boats. I'm going to use it for some sightseeing, around glaciers and stuff like that. So I'm not going to be using it just as a tender. So I went ahead and registered it. It wasn't that expensive. It was just more of a huge inconvenience. And to me, it's a little bit silly if you got it's a $1,200 inflatable rowboat with a 2.5 horse Yamaha kicker on the back. I can go almost 5 knots in that speedboat. Almost 5 knots. But it's better than rowing, especially, I bought that dinghy so I could put 3 adults and 3 dogs and a little bit of gear, and it'll support all the weight of that. It supports, I think, almost just over 1,000 pounds, that inflatable sport boat. That's one of the reasons why I picked that one over some of the other ones, was the weight. I wanted to be able to make one trip with everybody. So that's the dinghy. I am bringing the 2.5 horse Yamaha kicker for that. There was a question somebody asked, did you go out to some kind of a bimini mount to keep the front of the rib up off the deck? I looked at trying to get the dinghy up there. I just didn't want to work that hard to lift it up that high. And I don't know that the support struts that I have on the bimini are actually strong enough to hold the extra weight of the dinghy as well. And I didn't want to put anything, I didn't want to have to strengthen it up or whatever, right? So we used the ski pole with the T-bar, you guys have seen, and that actually works really well. It takes 2 of us to get in and out, but it's not that hard. We can deploy it and retrieve it fairly easy. I'd say the worst part is getting the 2.5 horse kicker onto it just because of how bulky it is. We did the Yamaha 2.5 motor because it was 35 pounds. If I had to do it again, I'd probably do an electric motor because I could take it apart in 3 pieces and it'd be even easier to move on them. But they were like 3 times the cost. You know, and at the time when I bought the Yamaha 2.5 kicker, I didn't know how I would charge it underway. I didn't have the electrical system. Now today, with the electrical system I have on channel surfing, I would not worry about charging it underway. But here and again, if you had 2 batteries, right, you'd charge both at the dock, and when one dies, you know when you're on your spare, right, and that gives you a chance to know when you have to get back to shore power to recharge them. That would be an alternative way of doing it. Let's see. So. Another question I got, survival suits, satellite phones, InReach, EPIRB. Survival suits, I hope I don't need one of those. And they're bulky and big. So, no, we're not doing that.
Can we just throw the dinghy in the water?
Yeah, and swim over to Janet's boat. Yeah, satellite phone and EPIRB, no to both of those. EPIRB... I've got InReach. InReach has a SOS on it already that I could do, and that's satellite to send a signal out. So I do have that, but it's a manual thing to have to press. The InReach also does tracking, so I have it set to every 10 minutes. It'll report our position. It'll record, our tracks, and that way you guys can actually log in. I set up so you guys could all log into the InReach site for channel surfing and see where we're at, because AIS and stuff obviously is going to be spotty, being able to pick us up. As far as connectivity goes, though, I do have quite a bit of communications on board. So we've got that 5G/LTE antenna. It's the Mobility 42G antenna that I put up on the mast, and that does really well as long as I'm near a city or a town with an LTE tower, right, cell phone tower. If I'm too far out of range from that, I do have Starlink that I can bring out and set up and then put away when I'm done using. I've also got a Garmin GXM54 weather antenna, which gives me real-time weather on the chart plotter when I'm driving. That's really nice to know what direction the wind's coming from and such. I use it a lot for that. Another question I got from folks, extra water, extra fuel. So extra water, we will conserve water all through Canada, inside of Southeast Alaska. All the major cities have water, to be able to top off. So we just topped off our water tank, and we're going to empty our sand tank tomorrow when we leave, because we expect to spend 6 to 8 days to get through Canada, and I'm not expecting to do a pump out. I don't want to use my macerator if I don't have to. Canada's not well known for having pump outs at all their docks like Puget Sound does. So you end up discharging, 3 miles offshore, and I really don't want to have to do that at all. So I'd rather, we generally can go 9 to 10 days on our 30-gallon Blackwater tank with 3 adults on board. Usually what we use for a formula I figured out works best is for every person on board, I figure 1 gallon a day per person. So 3 people on board, that's 3 gallons a day of the Blackwater tank. That's a 30-gallon tank, that's 10 days. And that's worked well for us thus far. But it means I gotta, not knowing when we're at the dock, we use the head on the boat all the time, so I don't know where the level is. So in going to Canada, I need to start with it at 0. So we'll pump it out first thing in the morning. Extra fuel.
Okay.
Yeah. So extra fuel, we've got a 150-gallon gas tank, and one of the cool things with the R27 is it's actually got really good range. Now I got the 4-bladed prop that cost me about 13% fuel efficiency, but I pick up improved hole shot, improved stern lift. I can travel at slower speeds. I mean, I can do 12, 13 miles an hour and stay on plane with that 4-blade prop and the auto glide that lowers the trim tabs to keep the boat actually up on plane. So that's kind of nice there, but I do burn more fuel because of the 4-blade prop and stuff. And actually on this trip, we're probably a little bit heavy too with all the stuff we brought too, so that's gonna hurt us on the miles per gallon. However, I could always go slower if I had to make it. I mean, if I do 7 miles an hour, I'm gonna be over 3 miles per gallon, all right? So that would extend the range quite a bit. I like to do the rule of 3s on my fuel. I've got a 150-gallon tank, so 50 gallons to get there, 50 gallons to get back, 50 gallons reserve. That's usually the method I try and follow. Now, technically, the R27 has a 147-gallon gas tank. That's what the label on top of the tank says. We round up to 150 because it makes the math easier, but just recognize there's about 3 gallons short there. I have actually been as low as 25 gallons in the tank, and I know one other RT27 that's been down to 15 gallons left in the tank.
Too close.
Yeah, but that's a little close. I don't like to get down that low. So for this trip, I'm going with 115 gallons of usable fuel. That's what I'm doing all my calculations off of. That between gas stations, I got to stay within 115 gallons usable. I actually put a spreadsheet together that would do the math for me, so I could say, well, let's say I want to go 200 miles. How many miles at 7 miles an hour do I have to go, and how many miles at 25 miles an hour can I go to only burn the 115 gallons of gas? So that way I can blend slow speeds with better miles per gallon with fast speed to compound the time to figure that out. But for the most part, where the fuel stops are, we're going to be fine within 100 miles. You know, I say within 100 gallons of gas between stops. So on my prediction, at least what I've looked at on the course, is generally we hit a fuel dock, we're going to be putting in right around 100 gallons, maybe a little bit less at the fuel dock. So numbers I have for channel surfing: 7 miles per hour at 2.4 gallons per hour. That's just under 3 miles per gallon. That'd give me a range of about 290 miles, but that's also 42 hours. Right? That's a long time of slow boating. At 30 miles an hour, at 22 gallons per hour, that gives me 1.36 miles per gallon. That's a range of about 136 miles, which is 4.2 hours. So do I want to spend 42 hours or 4.2, right? You know, that's the big difference. That's the advantage that the outboard gives with that speed. But the disadvantage is nobody wants to see, 22 gallons per hour. Speaking of which, wide open throttle is 27 gallons per hour. And that would cut my range to about 125 miles for 3.5 hours. So one of the things I have been doing in preparation for this trip is I keep very detailed fuel logs. I have 3 years of every fill up, miles, engine hours, odometer, all that stuff. I'll share that here, post it up here for you guys to take a look at. I was going to do another video to talk specifically about the fuel efficiency and stuff of it. Because in that 3 years, half of that time was with a 3-blade and half was with a 4-blade. So it's a good comparison of it. It also shows the first year of the boat when we were pretty light on weight, and then by the second year we pretty much fully moved in, and this is our second home. We come down here, take a change of clothes and some food, and then we go away for a weekend or a week, right? Talk about the sand pump outs versus the macerator. Hoping I don't have to use the macerator overboard. In Southeast Alaska, pump outs are readily available at all the big cities. Ketchikan, Petersburg, Juneau, etc. So it's really only Canada that you end up having to use the macerator for. And here and again, we're hoping to scoot through Canada, in less than 10 days, so that my next pump out will be Ketchikan, is what I'm hoping for. Fishing gear. Why no fishing gear? So here's the thing with fishing. I love fishing, and that was one of my hopes and dreams and stuff of going to Southeast Alaska, was to be able to fish up there. I've done several charters. I mean, we did 6 years running. We were flying up to Homer, Alaska for a 2-day back-to-back halibut charter. Lots of fun. Really enjoyed that. And so my favorite fish to catch is actually halibut. And that's what I was hoping to do in Southeast Alaska, was go halibut fishing on my boat while we're there. Turns out it is actually illegal to have processed halibut on your boat. And since we're effectively a liveaboard for the purposes of this trip, I could catch a halibut and I'd have to eat what I could at the dock and throw the rest of it away or mail it home to somebody. And I was like, well, that pretty much sucks. All you're allowed in the state of Alaska on halibut is you can catch the halibut and keep it whole on your boat till you get back to the dock, or you can fillet it. So you get four long fillets, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, then the cheeks. that you can have, but you cannot process it any further than that. You can't cut it up into packages and freeze it and keep it in your freezer and then eat it, you know, one night after the next. So because of that, I was like, okay, really can't halibut fish. Leave the halibut gear at home. I looked at crabbing. Well, there's no point crabbing up there because we do really good crabbing here. I don't need to carry gear up to Alaska to get Dungeness crab. I can do that fine in Puget Sound and San Juans. And I left shrimp. I love doing Puget Sound spot prawns, and they have spot prawns in Southeast Alaska, but I'm an out-of-state resident, so they cut the limit in half for out-of-state resident. I'm like, I can get, you know, 80 shrimp per person per day in San Juans. Why would I go to Alaska, bring all that gear with me, carry it up there and back, and get half of a limit per day? So I leave that gear home. So that really left salmon, and salmon I could do, but fortunately for me, I suck at salmon fishing with downriggers. So I was like, I didn't want to spend my time struggling or trying that out. So I just figure, I mean, it is actually pinks this season. You know, we'll be back in time for that. I'm going to miss shrimp season. Pretty bummed about that. I'm hoping Fishing Game does an extra opener for shrimp season later this year when I get back. In fact, ironically, we chose to leave Thursday the 25th because it's going into Memorial Day weekend, and if I left Friday or Saturday, then I'd be fighting the Memorial Day weekend crowd, so I wanted to leave a day early to get away from that. And then Fishing Game released the shrimp opening dates. Tomorrow is the opening day for shrimp season in Everett. So there's going to be a mob of boats taking off. Another reason why I want to leave early in the morning. I want to get away from the mob because everybody's going to be hitting all the boat ramps and everything out of here at Marine Area 82 to get shrimp season in tomorrow. Alright, so that's why I don't have any shrimp. So we just decided, you know, I'm going to work from the boat for this trip, and we're going to put a bunch of videos and stuff together and just try and capture everything we can on video and share it with all you guys. And that really left no time for fishing, especially with all these restrictions, you know, and caveats that I was being faced with. And then lastly on my list is spare tools and parts. So I've got a fairly large selection of tools. I'm bringing all my Craftsman set, everything I need to work on the engine. When I was thinking for spare parts, that's where I put a little more thought into it. So oil, I brought enough that I can top off if the engine burns oil. But to do an oil change and stuff, if I decide to do that, I'll buy oil somewhere up there. There'll be somewhere up there that sells oil, right? I mean, it's but I did bring parts. So I brought a water pump kit in case, you know, let's say, you know, I get some kelp wrapped around the engine and it burns up a water pump by blocking the water intake. I have the parts to replace. I will need a haul out and have to drop the lower unit, but I could do all of that work. I have all the tools on board to do all that, and I got the replacement water pump for that. I brought a couple spare thermostats. I brought some spark plugs, you know, for that. I bought a whole bunch of ring free for the trip because I figure we'll be doing a lot of slow boating, you know, to treat the fuel, keep carbon buildup and stuff away. That's a big recommendation from the Yamaha dealer if you're doing a lot of slow boating. And the Yamaha engines, they like to be ran hard, right? So when you do 7 miles an hour with them for hours, it's important to run ring free to keep the carbon buildup down. And I brought a spare router for the boat. So I have 2 of those Peplink Max Pro 5G LTE routers. My original one actually broke on me, was the catalyst for this. It actually failed. I worked with Peplink. They RMA'd it under warranty and sent me a new one. And I thought, my God, if that thing breaks on me on my trip, I won't get Starlink, I won't get LTE. I mean, that would be horrific. So when they were processing the RMA, I wasn't sure if they were going to get me my replacement in time for the trip. So it's like I just bought a second one, and then of course the RMA one came back, so I have 2. And I thought it's good that I have 2 because if that thing was to fail, I would be struggling. So so I've got a spare internet router on the boat. What else did I do as a spare?
Janet.
Yeah, another thing that's spare, we joke about Janet being a spare, but in all honesty, having 2 boats, you know, when Janet asked me to go, I was pretty excited about that because it cuts down on the kind of spares. Think about, like, what if a freshwater pump was to fail? Well, one of us have got freshwater, right? It would work, you know, kind of stuff. So it's just having the 2 boats, I think, helps as far as that goes, because there's some things that aren't necessarily mission critical, they're more of an inconvenience. What if the propane stove was to fail on my boat? Right? I could use Janet's to cook dinner. right? Or if her broke, you know, we make dinner over here, right? So there's some other things that work. And then of course, you know, you talk about, you know, EPIRB, life raft, that kind of stuff. You know, we've got 2 boats. If her boat breaks, I can tow her in. If mine breaks, you can tow me in. So we get some advantages there having the 2 boats. And it's also nice that only being 2 boats, not being a large flotilla, because it's easier to travel with fewer boats. Not that large flotillas are bad, it's just a different experience. And we're looking to cover a lot of ground. We want to get through Canada. Not that we don't like Canada, we love Canada, actually. But getting all the way up to Glacier Bay and Juneau.
This trip's all about Alaska.
Trip's all about Alaska. So we just, you know, the furthest we've been north, we could ask that question a lot, and the answer is Ganges, BC. Everything north of Ganges, BC. And Ganges is not that far north for us, right? We've not been. It's all going to be new to us.
Yep.
So other spare parts, definitely a spare prop with spare cotter pin and 27mm socket with a 18-inch breaker bar, so that I can replace the prop. On the outboard, actually, I can replace the prop with the boat in the water. I just kick the engine up and I can go out with the dinghy. I got a block of wood that I put between the prop and the engine housing to keep it from spinning as I undo that. So if I ding something, you know, I've got a 3-blade spare prop on board, and Janet's also got a spare prop as well. That's actually pretty important. Probably the most important thing I brought on the boat, though, was well, besides the Xena, was a square keg. I'm gonna have draft beer. I'm gonna have draft beer on the boat. I'm so excited about that, actually. So that's cool. And then this has actually got a lot of attention. There was more attention than I was expecting to get. So an anchor retrieval system, right? What do you do if your anchor gets stuck on the bottom? It grabs a cable, a log, a stick, something, and you can't pull it up, right? That was a big fear I had. The water up there is fairly deep, you know, so I expect to be using all my anchor chain of road, and I have to be selective as to the anchorages because, you know, with how much road and stuff that I have out. So anyhow, I was worried about losing the anchor. So the system I went with is by SANMAR International. I got it at the boat show, not this last boat show, the one before I picked it up. And it looked like a sound system, you know, what he had. I haven't had to use it to recover my anchor. I hope I never do, but if the anchor gets stuck, I have another method to try and get the anchor up. Yeah, so as I said in that short clip, I've got 150 foot of 3/8 inch 3-strand anchor rode that I bought specifically for the anchor retrieval device, with a buoy to go with it. And the buoy is just to keep the line from falling to the bottom if I drop it overboard. But the idea is that with this SANMAR anchor recovery system, that I should be able to pull the anchor backwards up by the shovel.
Hopefully we don't ever have to use it.
Right, and unlodge it. You don't use it to pull the anchor all the way up. You just want to get it unstuck, so then you can use the windlass to pull it the rest of the way up. So with that, we need to get to bed, and we're heading up at dark 30 in the morning, and we should be in BC by mid-afternoon tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more channel surfing.
The boys are already in bed. Mopar, Nuka,
Aww.
Emma, Seepin, and Melissa.
Hi.
And the captain.
And a captain. Time to go to bed.
And me.
If you enjoyed watching this video, click the screen to watch another.